BRAINPOINTS, the best language learning productivity guide. So this might seem like a bit of a weird video, but I promise it can be useful for you. So Gen Z is kind of characterized by its extreme lack of productivity. And I think a lot of people just with like social media and stuff are really, really unproductive these days. And that kind of makes language learning really difficult. That's kind of something you need to be hyper productive with if you want to make really, really good progress. So by the end of this video, you will understand the concept of BRAINPOINTS, which I'm definitely going to explain because you almost definitely haven't heard of it, and basically how to conserve them to maximize your productivity. So if you do like this kind of educational content on language learning, guys, definitely hit the subscribe button and let's go. So what are BRAINPOINTS? To understand BRAINPOINTS, you first need to understand what attention residue is. So basically, when we switch tasks, for example, say I'm making a YouTube video, for example, scripting it, and then I go and, fold washing or whatever. That's an example of task switching. A little bit of attention is lost, and that's called attention residue. So every time you switch from one task to another task, you're actually losing a little bit of attention. It's not like you're moving. If you have 100 attention on something, for example, and you move to another task, now you might have 98 attention, just as like an arbitrary number, just because you're losing a little bit. And throughout the day, more and more attention is lost through task switching, making it more and more difficult to pay attention to important things. Because obviously, at the end of the day, you're kind of cooked after work or whatever, because you've just had to do so many different things that over time, that attention residue has built up to the point where you don't actually have that much focus left. So BRAINPOINTS are kind of like, they're not actual, like, it's not like an actual scientific metric. It's kind of just like a bro sciencey thing, but it's basically made up points to measure how much focus you have left in the day. And understanding it can actually be useful for a lot of people with their productivity. So unfortunately, many people do destroy the number of BRAINPOINTS they have to put towards productive work. And I'm going to explain how that works. So the way BRAINPOINTS work are basically, it's kind of like hypothetical. So say you start the day with 100 BRAINPOINTS, for example. They're just arbitrary points that kind of measure your focus. Throughout the day, doing things like checking your phone, eating, decision making, all those things, they leave behind attention residue, as we established before. And each time you leave behind attention residue, you're losing BRAINPOINTS. So you might lose 5 BRAINPOINTS, for example, if you're checking your phone. You might lose 10 after eating just because you're digesting food. And that slowly takes away from basically your bandwidth to do any kind of deep work. And by deep work, I mean work on an important task that requires full concentration. So it could be language learning, it could be making a YouTube video like this where I have to concentrate. It could be literally anything. The problem is when you have all these distractions that it's basically taking away BRAINPOINTS, it's really, really difficult to focus on deep work tasks. And what that results in is you don't actually really make progress in deep work tasks. So you need BRAINPOINTS for deep work tasks like this and like language learning, but unfortunately, many bad habits and shallow tasks. So for example, phone notifications going off is an example of a bad habit. A shallow task would be eating. So it's like something that's not unimportant, but it's not really something that requires focus. These things, even though they don't require BRAINPOINTS like deep work, they still kind of take them away. So it's very important to kind of consider that the more things you do, the more task switching, it is kind of diminishing your concentration throughout the day, and that can make doing deep work later in the day really, really difficult. So now that we understand how BRAINPOINTS kind of work, here are 2 things you must do. 1, reduce the number of bad habits that sap BRAINPOINTS. So bad habit examples might be phone checking and notifications going off, unnecessary decisions, unnecessary distractions, disorganization, not knowing what you need to do, for example. All of those things are examples of bad habits, and although you can't get rid of some of them, you do need to reduce them. So I'd recommend setting yourself actual times that you check your phone and not just checking it whenever, and also putting your phone on silent, do not disturb, and then putting it somewhere else when you're doing deep work like learning a language, because it will distract you. Unless, of course, you're listening to a podcast or watching a video on your phone, there's not really a reason to have it next to you. Also, unnecessary decisions, I guess, help like putting things out the night before if you're going out the next day can be useful as well, just to stop you from having to make a split-second decision, and it just kind of saves time the next day. As far as disorganization goes, it's basically like having a kind of to-do list, or I'd recommend you use a habit tracker for language learning, just kind of knowing what you need to do the next day for language learning, like you're going to do reading for half an hour here. Just kind of planning it out already instead of having to decide on the spot, I've found is good for your concentration. And the second thing you should do is basically organize your day to prioritize a deep work task. So if you know your goal at the moment is to learn a language, and you're going to do, for example, half an hour or 1 hour tomorrow of language learning, you should kind of prioritize it. So don't just chuck it in somewhere, put it in kind of the best spot of your day to be productive. So maybe you're really productive in the morning, maybe you're reproductive in the early afternoon, maybe you're maybe you're really productive at night. That's when you should put the basically the deep work task for when you're going to do the hard work. So although putting it later in the day might be not good because you don't have as many brain points to concentrate, that might be better for you if it takes you a really long time to wake up. For example, just make the decision for yourself based on your kind of personality and how you work. But yeah, that's basically it, guys. Overall, the concept of brain points it's kind of an arbitrary concept, but it does boil down to reducing the number of pointless tasks so that you can reduce kind of your attention span residue. And that is actually a thing that happens. So if you did like this video, guys, definitely hit the subscribe button. It does really help the channel. As always, if you have any questions, comment them down below. I've got links to my Discord and website in the description, and have a good one.